Now, leading our bulletin this half hour, the African National Congress has called for the speedy arrests of those responsible for suspected political killings in the province. Now, former spokesperson Zizi Kodwa urged the country to reject phrases such as political killings and instead see murder as a crime against society. A municipal official was shot dead in KwaZulu-Natal as the province battles a renewed spate of political killings. The killing comes as the ANC top brass visits the province to address political killings, among other things. The latest killing comes just days after ANC councillor Musawenkosi Mchunu was shot dead in Pietermaritzburg. IFP councillor Sibuyiselo Dlamini was also gunned down in Ulundi on Friday, the same day Mchunu was killed. Meanwhile, ANC Oshabeni branch treasurer Sfiso Cele was later arrested on Saturday following his killing last week. Many political leaders have condemned the killings, which threatened to return KZN to the war zone it was in the past.
And again, it may be a wrong speculation. The issues that they've raised are more organizational. We're dealing with those issues. We've got a team that is led by conveners of the NEC that continue to meet, as we are aware, for an example. In eThekwini region, there's Fafa side in the province, there's Tena side that is dealing with these complex issues that are being raised by people who feel that there's gatekeeping, there's manipulation of membership. We are dealing with those issues organizationally. Whether can you link those to the killing, I think it would be wrong to make those speculations. We must deal with killings because killing of anybody, a murder, is a crime. It can't be called or given any name as glorified political killing. There's nothing called political killing. It's a crime that must be dealt with, and law enforcement agencies must deal with whoever is implicated, because at the end we are interested as an organization. What are the motives behind such senseless elimination of ANC leaders, especially councillors of the ANC?
Following the latest death of one of the ANC leaders, Mchunu, in Moses Mabhida, we were able to visit the family as well and meet a number of the people out in the area. We passed our condolences to the family and to those closest to him as his colleagues. Naturally, we are very, very concerned about these killings that continue, and our presence here means that we want the greatest attention to be paid to these killings that have to stop. We cannot have a situation where people in our province here continue to be killed on an ongoing basis.
Now, joining us live in studio on this very story is Alfred Tlo, who's SAPU national negotiator. Then via Skype we have Professor Begim Gomezulu, who's a political analyst. And we also have via phone Richard Mamabolo from POPCRI. He happens to be the spokesperson. Gentlemen, welcome to all three of you. Perhaps to start with you in studio. Now, for the longest time, we've had politicians wanting to confine the killings of other politicians as mere criminality, acts of criminality. And again, now we hear Zizi Kodwa saying, please let us refrain from using such phrases as political killings, even though they are politicians. This is criminality. What is your take?
Good evening, Mfundo and the viewers. Look, we want to side with that very same notion by Zizi Kodwa that there is nothing that is called political killings. What is happening in KZN is pure, senseless murders of citizens of the country. And I don't know why should we have that courtesy to even classify it as political killings. These are senseless murders of different people and persona in KZN. Like you have just said in your preamble, there are people who have been shot the whole 2-3 weeks, including the deputy president of NACTU, Alan Thompson, who was shot at even last week. This morning, we woke up with a shock that a taxi owner and his son, 16-year-old son, was also shot and killed. Now, how do we classify these killings as political killings? It cannot be correct. These are senseless murders of innocent citizens of the country that happen to be taking place in KZN province. And in terms of the Criminal Procedure Act, these are Schedule 1 offenses. These are offenses in which when a person is arrested, he or she should be sent to jail to rot.
Perhaps let's find out from Professor Mgomezulu. Professor Mgomezulu, your take on this, because again here there is that coincidence that they happen, well, most of them happen to be politicians. We heard the likes of Senzo Mchunu, well, really going on to say that in fact these are political killings and these are factional wars. And we know with the late Mchunu himself, he was part of a grouping that went on to speak out against some of the issues within KZN, and then he gets shot. What's your take on the political dynamics there in KZN?
No, thank you very much, and thank you very much for listeners. Yeah, I tend to hold a different opinion that these killings that are happening in KwaZulu-Natal are not just your normal murders. You either have killings that are motivated by taxi violence, wherein taxi owners and are fighting over roads that are seen to be more lucrative. So that kind of a murder is a murder, yes, but it's motivated by taxi violence or at least the taxi routes. Then we have this other one, which is referred to as political killings. The reality of the matter is the only distinction I can do is what I refer to as intra-party killings and inter-party killings. Intra-party killings are killings that happen within political parties. More especially when people are vying for positions, they will then eliminate one another with the hope that once the political enemy is gone, I will then assume power, not knowing that there is something behind me who will also do the same thing. So for me, the term political killings is appropriate in this case because these are not your ordinary murders wherein people are just murdered for other reasons. They are politically motivated, hence the name political killings.
Professor, could this perhaps be a missed opportunity for politicians here, that perhaps if they acknowledge these to be political killings, then they can resolve them, because it would force them to now deal with the issues, if it's perhaps issue of positions, patronage, you name it. But do you think if they constantly refuse to have these killings labeled as political killings, that the problem might never be solved?
Yeah, that's exactly my point, Mpondo, that if we just call them ordinary murders, the problem is we are going to miss the point, because we are going to confuse even the police. They will be investigating an ordinary murder that happens across the country, when in fact they should be touching base with the political leaders and then trying to find out from them why do they think these killings are continuing. Because all the names that have been mentioned, except for the taxi owner and a 16-year-old son and then the 4-year-old who survived, except for that one which is linked to political violence, the rest of them are political killings. These people who have been killed are either currently office bearers or they've once been office bearers of different political parties, be it the IFP or be it the ANC. So the reality of the matter is these killings are politically motivated, and therefore for me, the label political killings is in fact appropriate, because in order for you to cure me, I must first admit that I'm sick. So in this case, our politicians have to be frank and admit that there is something wrong in the political mindset of our political activists, not just leaders, but also the general electorate. So to the extent that if I want a position, the only way I can get that position is to eliminate the person who is occupying it or the one who is my competitor, not knowing that tomorrow the same thing will happen to me. And this thing is perpetuating itself because politicians are refusing to admit that we have a problem and that problem needs to be addressed immediately.
But I think we also need to touch on the regions, because this is prevalent in certain areas and not so much in other areas, like the urban areas, the Gautengs, you name it. So probably that on its own is worth a broader conversation, but we'll come back to that. Perhaps let's rope in Pop Crew spokesperson Richard Mamabolo. Richard, now as spokesperson of Pop Crew, we all heard the testimonies at the Moirana Commission. A number of those who came there as witnesses, they fingered police in some of these incidents. What has been your take around some of those testimonies coming out of the Moirana Commission?
Look, I think the first thing we need to do is obviously to acknowledge that there are such killings happening and acknowledging the kinds of killings they are, and from that we can then be in a position to deal with them thoroughly. But when you look at the situation that has been happening in KZN, you can compare it to what is happening within, well, the Uber industry, the taxi wars. So we think it's mainly an economic contest for resources. I think it's got nothing to do with ideological differences within the organization. Well, the organizations, and it could be some form of an internal strife that obviously goes against the principles, the aims and objectives of the affected organizations. But you look again into another aspect has been that well, there has been a report released recently which suggests that over 50% of councillors in some of the areas do not have sufficient qualifications, meaning matric for that matter, and which is not necessarily a prescript for being a councillor, but that therefore shows that people see positions as the only source of survival or economic means. And in those cases, when you look at the incidents that have been happening, most people who have been killed or almost killed are councillors or people who will be contesting for certain positions within organizations. So we think that perhaps we need to obviously look into that more.
Alfred, your take. I mean, it seems Richard is agreeing with the professor to say, to a certain extent, these can be referred to as political killings, because here you've got a contest for economic resources, because a number of the councillors at times don't have any other means of survival beyond being councillors.
Look, obviously, we must agree to disagree. And we still disagree as an organization that this cannot be turned political killings. In fact, we are basically giving them a credit when we say it's political killings. Everybody in KZN, those people that are killed, unfortunately happen to be occupying certain positions in certain organizations. But that does not justify, say, because of somebody was killed as a result of occupying a particular position in an organization, therefore the death of such a person should be aligned to the political office that he's holding. For example, this morning we talk about a taxi owner who was shot. Inside that car when he was shot, there was a 16-year-old kid who is not occupying any position, unfortunately. He was just an innocent citizen who was shot. The now to deputy
Couldn't
president.
we say he was caught in the crossfire?
Exactly.
But there could still be a motive. There could still be a motive, and then the motivation there, or some would say that, okay, this is now taxi violence, that perhaps they're fighting over routes or something of that nature. That we're not only saying there's just political killings, there can also be taxi killings. So at least that's what Professor Mgomezulu is saying, that we can have motivation for certain killings. If some want to confine a killing of a lover as a crime of passion or something of that nature, or femicide, we're giving it a name. Do you feel uncomfortable with giving any form of killing a name?
Yes, and why? We do not have any confirmed reports, and we don't have, therefore, a motive for these killings until investigation will be done by the police and a modus operandi is then found that should then give this particular killings a tag. For now, as in the police environment, we say this is senseless killing of innocent citizens, and they should not be put to a level whereby we classify them and put a particular priority on them. These are killings that are senseless, and people must be arrested and they must be sent to jail and rot. Why should we classify each and every death as if there is an, in Russia, there's politics of other people being equal than the others. Now we are classifying them as if they need to be given a particular priority. Every death in the South African Police Service, it's a Schedule 1 offense. People must be investigated and arrested. That's our position. So obviously in that aspect, Fundo, we agree to disagree.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And then beyond this, the role of the police, because they were criticized. They have been criticized by some, that in KZN specifically, some of them played a role, or even the weapons used were found to have belonged to some police officers. What's your take?
Look, we cannot deny or agree with that statement because we don't have a confirmed report. But the role of the police in this particular situation is found wanting, we must agree. And perhaps we must trace from the back as to what causes this particular situation to be where it is. Currently, there is a lack of resources in the police, But not only that, even that included the interference by the politicians by themselves. Remember in 1996 when Jackie Selebi was appointed as a national commissioner, he found units that are specialized in the police and they were disbanded. You had a unit that was called Murder and Robbery Unit. Those units, you've got the Children Protection Unit. Those units were disbanded for one reason or other. That was because of politics. Now, after this disbandment of these units, which were specialized in nature, we see this escalation of murders whereby people are evading arrest or even some are arrested after a long time. Let's also look at 2009 when the Scorpions were disbanded by the previous president before he just took over. You had a unit like the Scorpions that was arresting without fear and favor and which had a significant, shall I say, success. But because of the politics of the day, it was disbanded. That's why we've got this crisis that we have at the current moment. So yes, we are found wanting in the police environment, but with the little resources that the women and men in blue are having, we are trying our level best. Perhaps it is going to be relevant now that the politicians must start, giving the police an opportunity to do what they know best, which is policing. Because as I've just given an example, we had previous specialized units that were able to trace and arrest without fear and favor. But when each police commissioner comes, he or she dismantles the good policies that are there. Ria Pierre, for example, when she came, she found good policies and she dismantled some of the policies. Hence, we had issues like Marikana having taken place because of every national commissioner that comes with his or her style of management, and in the process also with the interference by politicians themselves, we've got the challenge that we have in the police, and also, of course, escalated by the issue of resources. But it also had to do with the management style of any commissioner that comes in the police.
What about the suggestion of rotation of members of the force? That you cannot have people working in an environment for too long as police officers in that area. They need to be moved elsewhere because they start to be part of that community.
Look, Fundo, we agree that principle. In fact, it's a very positive principle. We endeavor to even support it at all material cost, even at operational level. It is a very good principle in that it also, try to eliminate these police officers from the same communities that they have grown at and, happen to even, know some of these criminals.
Because it would be difficult to arrest people that you've become close to.
Exactly. That is why we say as South African Policing Union, we support that principle as long as it does not have malice intention. Because previously it was like that before, that as a police officer, when you are appointed in the service, you knew as part of your employment, contract of employment, that you could be placed anywhere. But as I've said, each commissioner they came with their own regulation and laws, and we had an influx of people operating in the same areas where they are born and bred. And now that makes policing a little bit difficult in that we harbor the same criminals we are supposed to arrest. They are our neighbors, and some of them are basically known to the police officers. But because of the situation whereby you are making policing in the same environment whereby you grew up, that's why we've got this particular challenge. But we agree with the principle that police officers must be basically deployed at areas where they are unknown.
Perhaps to bring in Richard Mamabolo quickly. Richard, your take on this, just the rotation of police officers, because, you could try to solve one problem and create another one, where you've got police officers saying you've got to recognize that we have families. We cannot be moving from one province to another, so we could create that sort of a problem. What's your take on the rotation?
Like the Sapu guy just said, I think obviously it comes with different operational plans that come with different, commissioners that we've had in the past. And, we did not necessarily have a problem with that. But just to go back to the issue, I think the issue that we're discussing here, I think we need to move from being general to the specifics. I think as well to suggest that some of the incidents around the killings that have been happening is coincidental, is not necessarily scientific, because there are trends that are there. There are trends that are there, and when you look at the kind of trends, they definitely show that the people who are usually killed are those who are councillors or people who have got some positions or another within the organizations. So that again points us to a certain direction where we obviously need to investigate. We cannot then generalize it and say no, it's similar to taxi war killings. I mean, even within the taxi industry, when there are specific taxi industries being targeted, then you know where exactly to look. But overall, we think that the role of police, of course, is very important in dealing with these crimes. But again, I think we tend to focus on blaming police a lot rather than obviously making certain issues a societal issue. We think that there should obviously be some form of cooperation between communities, the involved organizations, and police in ensuring that there are thorough investigations which are done to resolve this. Because one of the things that we have learned is that where there are no good relations between communities and police, the crime rates tend to go up. But in cases where there are good relations, it's easier for police to obviously resolve some of these challenges, because all criminal activities happen within our communities. Members of communities know these people, and they obviously know what they are up to. So we think that perhaps it could be elevated to that level where society and police work together.
Professor Mngomezulu, Alfred maintains that this is just mere criminality. We cannot now give it a name, because that would mean we would prioritize these killings when South Africans are gunned down every day. So we've got to just call this some sort of a crime. People have died, and that is it.
For me, I think although I disagree from the police unit, because he's talking from a political point of view, and he has to stand by that, because this is what guides him on a daily basis. But for us who are standing out there and watching these killings happening, our friends, our relatives being gunned down, and all of them happen to be political activists. So it sends you a wrong message that indeed there is something terribly wrong within the realm of politics. So it means that some of our South Africans are not understanding politics correctly, to the extent that they believe that the only way you can move up the echelons of political power is by eliminating your political enemies. But then if we lump them all together, for me, that will be too dangerous, because we are going to miss the point. As a matter of fact, I have no problem with us prioritizing these killings that are happening in KwaZulu-Natal, because if we prioritize them, we are therefore better positioned to try and resolve the issue sooner than later, than if we're to lump them together and say these are just murders and then we have to treat them as such. Because if we do that, then we'll be too general, and then we are going to miss the point. By the time we come back and realize that we made a mistake, a lot of people would have been gunned down already.
And then as for the regions where these are prevalent, should we be reading much into that?
Absolutely, absolutely. If you look at KwaZulu-Natal in particular, and then you look at Itego, you look at Musadlala, you look at Herikwala, most eyes are focused on those areas. And then you look at the lower South Coast, which is where most of these problems are. Then you realize that the people who are getting killed are killed either because of these positions or because they are vocal on certain issues. So the moment you articulate your views, they tend to be different from the person next door, then you are considered an enemy. And the only way to deal with you then is to eliminate you, which I think is short-sighted, because as I said earlier on, if you kill me today, chances are you will be killed tomorrow. An eye for an eye makes the world blind, but most of our politicians seem not to understand that very well. So I particularly believe that some of the regions are worse off. So if we're to say these matters are general, then it means that we are going to disregard even the fact that some of these killings are happening in certain regions. Because in my view, if 1, 2, 3 killings are happening in one area, that should send it that we should take fast a quick way of resolving the issue before more people get killed.
So where to from here for politicians? Because we've got those in occupying higher positions refusing to acknowledge this as some sort of political killing. So where to from here?
Mbondo, are you talking to me?
Yes, I'm talking to you, Professor, saying where to from here for politicians, because it seems that it's a very dangerous career now. If you want to be a politician, you could lose your life.
The first point of departure for me is for politicians to admit that we have a problem. and then they must try to resolve the problem on their own. Once they've failed, they must bring in the electorate, because these people who are voting are the ones who are complaining at branch meetings, are the ones who are complaining at regional meetings, are the ones who are complaining at provincial meetings. So basically then it means that the senior leadership in each and every sector should be the first point of call. And then once they've failed as the leadership, they should then bring in the very people who are down there, because in all likelihood, very few politicians at senior level are involved in this killing. It's people at the lower level, by and large, although of course at the moment we don't have a hard fact, but the reality of the matter is you will not see a leader of a political party killing another leader of a political party, but it's members of the party that are responsible for these things, both within the political parties and across political parties as well. So that's where the problem, I think, is.
It certainly seems like there's less political tolerance at the bottom as opposed to the top. I mean, we've seen how members of opposition parties relate to each other. They may be in parliament, they scream and disagree, but it seems they're very cordial. But it is unfortunate. Gentlemen, thank you very much to the three of you, Professor Mgomez Zulu via Skype, as well as Richard Mamabolo, also via Skype, and Alfred Sapu, national negotiator, joining me live in studio. Thank you very much, gentlemen. More news and updates on the other side of this break.